Welcome to Faith Over Breakfast. You are listening to a podcast by Pastor Eric Siepen and Pastor Andy Littleton. If you enjoy Faith Over Breakfast, we encourage you to rate it on the Apple Podcast app, on Spotify, or Google Play. Thank you and enjoy the podcast. The following podcast is a conversation between Andy Littleton and his youth pastor. We hope you enjoy.
All right, so I'm really excited to have Missy Allen on the show today, and Missy is my youth pastor from First Church of God in Tucson, Arizona. So the way I recall it, and she'll correct the whole story and tell you the truth here in a moment, but when I was about 15 years old, I was invited to church by a girl. And so I checked out a new church, and that is the church where Missy was the youth pastor. And she not only got a couple of weeks with me, but got years after that of me being around this youth group and becoming pretty involved. I even ended up having a job at that church for a little while. So I'm excited, Missy, to have you on. And why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're up to these days?
I'm really glad, Andy. I think it's been 22 years since I actually left Tucson. So wow. It's been quite a while, and to just watch you blossom into the person that you are today. I follow you on social media, see what you do. You're writing your books and everything. And I'm just proud of who you have become as a Christian or as a minister. But where I'm at right now, I am still a minister. I'm no longer in the Church of God. I am in the Nazarene Church. Yeah. I volunteer right now. I left full-time ministry or part-time ministry about 8 months ago because I work full-time at a school. I truly believe came onto my heart for a while that I'm in a church, I'm in ministry, you're reaching people that come to church. Yeah. That the schools that we are at are very low income. I believe my school is my mission. Yeah. Even though it is a charter public school, I have crosses in my office. My teachers know that I am a pastor. They come and ask me to pray for them. So I've kind of switched my gears of ministry and brought it into my school system. Even though I can't necessarily preach the gospel or teach, they know that they can come to me at any time and I will share the gospel if they ask. Yeah. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now and as my job. But I volunteer at a church, a local church, and I teach the children, and I'm helping to guide a young man that is not in the ministry, but he's wanting to kind of start leading the youth group, and he has no experience. So I'm kind of mothering him along of what you can do, what you can't do, and kind of how to go about reaching our teenagers. Very cool. I don't know if I've ever, or if you told this story, it would have been years ago. When did you get into ministry? How did that begin for you? Whoa, that's it's not a hard question, but it's a heavy question. I got called to the ministry at the age of 12. Wow. And I know I've shared it because it's part of my testimony. Yeah. I was adopted at the age of 11. I came from a home that was, I was sexually abused. And at that time in my life, I went to a youth convention. I started going to a church, just kind of like you. Somebody invited me. I had a handicapped brother, and the church started called Church of Special Love, where they had the handicapped students from the city. And so they came to pick them up. So we were able to go too. So I started church, went to a youth convention, heard Lily McCutcheon. She was Church of God speaker. But I was saved under her, but she made an impact saying that the Lord loves you and he's there to keep you safe and protect you. And he's going to always be your guidance. Wow. Father figure was not a good terminology for me. Yeah. And so when the terminology that God is our father, I just didn't understand. But I got saved at that convention, and I asked God, I said, if you can get me out of this situation, I will serve you. Wow. And I felt free enough to share with our youth pastor, who shared with the senior pastor, then they got help for me. They helped get me out of the house. I was actually adopted by the pastor and his wife, and led through their ministry, and I continued to serve. And so it was children, youth, wherever I was called to do. And I've noticed that anymore, a lot of even in the education system, I deal with a lot of students that are in abusive situations.
Wow. And you and I just talked about this, but you have an adopted daughter. And so and that helps put those pieces together, that's a part of your story, and you all offered that. And then, give us just a brief sketch of, okay, so you started when you were 12. How far along were you in ministry when the Andy Littleton fate?
Okay. I was in Dallas, Texas. That's where I met my husband. Actually, I was going to Church of God college in Oklahoma City, Mid-America Christian University.
Yeah.
So I was there to get my Christian ed degree, not knowing necessarily where I was going to be. But after I got married to my husband, who we've been married now 33 years, he was in a strong part of the Dallas church. When I got married, they were needing a junior high pastor. So I went ahead and they let John and I both, because John and I both team, even though he was not minister, we worked together really good. So I became their junior high pastor for about 3 or 4 years. And then an opening came from Tucson, Arizona. A friend of ours that was leaving the ministry from Tucson, who I'd gone to college with, called and said, would you be interested in coming out to Tucson? So I came and tried out, and they accepted me. And so I was there. And then again, I did both junior high and senior high. And at the age of 15, we always told the kids, if you can get to church, we can take you home.
Yeah.
So a lot of the ministry, even though I'll talk a little bit maybe about what kind of ministry I kind of designed it, a lot of my ministry happened in that church van, driving students back to their house. It's that one-on-one connection. And so that's kind of how you came to be, because you were part of that church. We were pretty strong senior high.
Yeah.
In that we had a good, strong junior high, but you didn't leave. You just kind of stayed.
Yeah.
And it became a good, strong senior high group because you had got the basis in junior high.
Yeah. So, and I would have come a little bit later. Maybe I was even in high school. I can't remember if I was in 8th grade or high school.
I think you were just coming out of 8th grade.
Yeah. Sounds about right. Okay. So moment of truth. What was I like as a 15-year-old and beyond? This is an area of my life I've tried to block out, Missy, and I'm allowing you to. That's not really true.
No.
Yeah, what was I like?
When I think back of you, like I said, I'm so proud of who you've become. I saw you as a seeker. You always seemed, no matter what was being taught, you always were seeking questions. It's like you, and at that time, Andy, I don't think you were confident in who you were. I think you questioned yourself. You had things in your life that didn't go the way you had planned. You had a plan. You always had a plan. This is going to happen, and I want this and this and this. And it's like, that's not the way life works. Life doesn't work that. But you would get really, not in a depression, but you would really get discouraged when things weren't working out for you. And that's where I kept thinking, oh, Andy, you're struggling, and it made you struggle spiritually. It made you struggle who you were, just because you wanted things to work out the way you wanted it to be planned, or who you needed to be with, or and this is all senior high boys, I'm never going to get in a relationship. Do you know where we're at? Do you remember those times?
I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember as somebody that was seeking all the time. And again, also hard-headed. You didn't want to always, it was really hard to just come down and say, you know what, you got to trust, and it's going to be okay. And I remember saying to you, it's going to work out. It's going to be okay. And life is not always going to give you everything you want, and it's not going to always be perfect, but it's how you come out of the fire, how you come out of the storm that makes the difference. The storms are going to be there.
Yeah.
That's kind of a little bit, you were stubborn, you questioned life, and you, I think, questioned who you were. You had a hard time of figuring out who you wanted to be, what you wanted to do, and just believe in yourself.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Oh, sure. That all sounds right. I could probably add a lot more to that if you wanted to know the inner workings of my teenage brain. I don't know if
music. We did music studies. We did what things we were listening to. You know what I mean? All those things impacted that particular group that you were involved in. That's where God, I think, led to. You need to really allow these kids to know what kind of music they're listening to, what kind of things. Where do we put the Christian standard? And that's where we did these music comparisons. If you listen to this might be a music group that you like. So I tried to introduce Christian things that could help replace some of the things within the world.
Sure. Yeah, I remember some of that too. Okay. Give us for a second, because you're bringing up a little bit of kind of your theory on how to work with young kids and seeking bullheaded kids like me. What were some of the things that you found at that time were really resonating with the younger generation? And then I'm going to ask you after that what you think has changed, actually. But yeah, at that time.
The group that we had, because again, we had a lot of kids in our group. We had, I would say it's a third of our kids had parents that went to church. Mm-hmm. I would say 2/3 of our kids didn't have parents that go to church. So a lot of the kids there needed relations. Mm-hmm. And so as a youth pastor, I was not trying to throw the gospel or push the gospel. I taught the gospel, but I think I needed to build the relationship. I wanted them to be able to trust me, to support me as their pastor, but to know that I loved them, and no matter what they did in life. I mean, I remember making many conversations. If you're out at 2:00 in the morning and you get yourself into trouble and you feel you can't go to your parents, you better give me a call. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to be there no matter what. I'll come, no questions asked till the next day. But I remember, but I wanted them to know that it was a safe place. And then when I got them into that vulnerable, when they were hurting, I loved them. I loved the scripture on them. I loved Christ on them. And I think that makes a difference in how I enforced my ministry a little bit, as I did a lot with relationship. Yeah. Made sure that what I was teaching was what I was teaching.
Yeah. What do you, I assume that's still in play, but what differences do you see between kind of the young people of my era
we're dealing with right now? And I will tell you right now, and I think it doesn't matter if you're in Arizona or if you're in Texas, which is where I'm at right now. Our kids are losing respect for each other in life. Mm-hmm. I'm seeing that kids are not thinking about what happens when they die. Yeah. Because we're taking for granted life. I see kids that don't know how to share and talk with one another. I believe social media has gotten too blown up that there's not kids communicating with one another. We're not giving them any downtime to just let's sit down and have a conversation. And for a pastor, I believe that's hard right now because kids want to be entertained. They want to be all social in their technology, but I think it needs to come back down to we need to come down and just say, put everything aside for a minute. Let's have some conversations. Yeah. How are you really? They don't want to admit that they're hurting, but they don't have respect for life, themselves or others, and so they're out there. I mean, we're having mass shootings here in Texas like crazy. Yeah, and a lot of it's young people. Yeah. And it's like there's no, I'm hurting you. It doesn't matter. And so that's where we're really struggling. And our kids are seeing some of that, you know? Yeah. Friday, we had field day at our school. We had a parent. I mean, it was crowded and I was in charge of the day. We had a parent bring a gun, put it on his front seat, carrying, no idea. And, you know, we just had Uvalde 1 year ago, if you've heard about it. Oh, and yeah. My eyes are just crying because it's like, I have 600 something kids that I'm responsible for. Yeah. And I just want everybody to love one another. But I want you to know that when you die, there's something better, you know? that they don't think about the afterlife.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Do you see a lot of anxiety in kids?
Depression, anxiety, that they just don't know how to deal with things. We've got to calm down kids, because there's more kids today that get angry so easy, and they don't know how. So my office, I have a table with all kinds of things. I have calm down section where they can just come in and take set a timer for 20 minutes because they got to be by themselves, because there's just too much going on. Their stimuli around them is just too much. And again, they don't know how to go back and say, you can handle this. This is good. We're not teaching that you can be strong. Christ says you can be strong, but you got to depend on me. Nobody else. We only go to the church anymore when there's something happening in the world. There's not a sustaining moment. People want to do church online. They don't want to be fellowship.
Yeah.
That was COVID that hurt us there.
That was definitely a flashpoint, right? Like in this generation's life, like it. Yeah. So here are a few of my memories, or a few that stand out. There's a number of them. It's interesting that youth convention was a big thing for you. Missy, I don't know about you, but my adult self, I'm so tired of conferences. But then I think back about my youth experience, and some of those youth conventions were really important. You know that. For me, there were some moments where God really got something through to me. And so I remember very little about those conventions, but I remember little things very well. So I remember very little of it overall, but I remember little things very well. And so I remember, and I tell this story at our church all the time, of one of those situations where my plan was not working, and it involved me setting up my romantic life into its future, that it just wasn't panning out, and I was getting really down. I would say I was in a depression around then, and probably one of the darker ones I've had. I don't spend a lot of time there really today, but I was watching, and you probably had no idea about this, but I was watching the movie Boys in the Hood in the hotel room. I'm sure we weren't supposed to be watching that.
You weren't, but I know more than you think I know.
I bet you did, yeah. So with my my roommate, but I kind of was sitting there just thinking, and I thought to myself, if I died, nobody'd care. And I thought that, and then I thought, that's not good. I kind of thought this isn't a good thing to be thinking. Like, this is what people think when they go a bad direction.
Right.
And I just I was kind of sobered by, and I was like, uh-oh, I'm not okay. I think that was one of the first times I kind of went, I'm not okay. And I said a little prayer, something to the effect of just like, God, I'm not okay. What do I do? Something very simple. And the next day, Jacob Aranza was speaking, and the things he shared were things I'd heard a million times. Probably, to your credit, you were probably saying these things all the time. For some reason, that day...
It takes a different ear sometimes, yeah.
Every once in a while, yeah. And God delivered the same message through a different voice, and it made sense to me. I think I was at that point where I was like, I'm not okay. I need a God who can like call me to something higher and bigger than this, because if I stay here, I'm going to hurt myself. And that was a big deal. And then it would have been 2 years later, because those conventions were every 2 years, I think. And I don't remember who the speaker was, but it was a guy who was talking about being called to ministry. And I had graduated high school. You'd let me come as kind of a leader to the junior hires, I think. I think that's when I started being a prayer partner.
Right.
The guys who I still talk to, by the way. I don't know if you knew that.
No, I didn't know that.
I did his wedding and still get together.
Oh, that's cool.
Him and his wife sometimes, yeah. But I was there as kind of a junior leader, if you will. And I heard that message and I thought, I wonder if that's kind of what's happening with me. That's why I feel like I want to keep investing in these younger kids. And I believe, if my memory serves me right, I share this story. So, hopefully I'm not too far off.
Right.
But I came back and gave a report back at church that I wanted to go into ministry. And if there was a job, I'm ready to take it. And I can't remember where you were at in your process at that point, because somewhere in there, I was still at the church after you left.
Right.
So I can't remember where that was, but the church did give me a job for about a year.
Probably right after that Denver, because Denver was our last convention, and we had joy at that time. So we knew we were going to be moving on at that convention. That was like our last big convention, and we were coming back because we left in July, and that was like the end of June.
Yeah, so it was right in there.
Yeah, it was probably right after that.
So that was a pretty big moment, and I still look back at that as the time when I sensed that word was for me to some degree. And I've been in some form of either been working in ministry or volunteering or doing an internship or something ever since then. There's been some form of it pretty much the whole way. And then I remember the softball and volleyball, various, being involved in volleyball tournaments in Phoenix and softball and stuff there at the church. And I brought a friend or brought some friends around that got involved, and that was a big deal. And one of them ended up marrying somebody who you worked with for far longer than me, and I still know them.
Yeah.
And so that was pretty cool. And then another thing I remember pretty well is when you did student leaders, and I suggested the name of it. I don't remember much of those conversations, but I just remember you guys picked the name that I chose or that I suggested, and we did the shirts, and that felt, I think somewhere in there I was just getting a hold of, well, okay, tell me if this is accurate. I feel like I remember you saying to me, Andy, you're a leader here. Sometimes you're not helping me out or something like that. But when
more than likely, because I say it to our kids today, it's like, because you don't realize, and I did say that because people followed you.
Yeah.
And I always wanted to say, I want them, and I knew, like you said, we were doing, I know more than you think I know. But again, I was in it for relationship and trying to grow you.
Yeah.
I thought, and it's not my place necessarily to judge. I always gave it to God. And I said, God, I know these kids are involved in this right here, because I would know.
Yeah.
I need you to convict their heart.
Yeah.
When you convict their heart, then I need you to bring them my way so I can continue to lead them in the way they need to go.
Yeah.
And so that was always my prayer for my kids. Lord, you convict them, because whether I tell you it's right or wrong, Andy, you need to know it's right or wrong.
Yeah.
But I'll guide you once you understand that.
Yeah.
So be a leader, so you stop leading these other kids in the wrong way. Yeah.
Yeah, it was sort of one of those moments. That was a pretty big moment for me to I don't think I'd ever been told I was a leader before, but the way you said it, you're like, I think you said something like, look, when you're paying attention, everyone's paying attention. Mm-hmm. When you're being foolish, everyone's being foolish. You're a leader, and I need you to help me out. And I when I became a youth pastor, I used that line
a lot
on kids.
And that means a lot, yes. Yeah.
So
there's about 4 of you guys. And that it's like, you guys are stronger than you think. But again, Andy, you were fighting yourself so hard that I felt like I had to keep impressing that on your heart. You've got great in you. You just got to steer it that way, because you keep wanting to go the wrong direction, or just because this doesn't work, I know God's got something better for you.
Yeah.
It's hard to understand that or believe it at this moment.
Right. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for that. That was, all for everything, but that was something that's always stood out. It was like, you were the first person that kind of said, you're a leader and God can use you. If you'll, walk with him.
Walk it, keep it going.
But you're a leader either way, so you could do that for good.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of other various memories I have from the church, but those are some kind of big ones. There was, I can't remember if this was under your watch or not, but I think my first time speaking in front of the church was there at First Church.
We did a youth Sunday where I had and it might have been where I had some of the youth actually speak. I think I remember you speaking, so I think it was.
I spoke about Jonah, the end of the book of Jonah. I remember that. I don't remember exactly what I said, but yeah. Anyway, that was a big deal to kind of. I think I felt something like, okay, I want to do this. I feel like I can do this, and you gave us space to all of us to do those things. Yeah. So
I even look at one of ours. I'm not going to give him the name, but you guys wanted to start that band.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, we had people that could play, couldn't play, but hey, we'll practice.
Yeah.
There's one of those that now is doing music ministry.
Yeah. No kidding.
Was in that same group. He still lives in Arizona. That same group that I remember when he first was learning to play the guitar.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
yeah.
now it plays the guitar and leads a church worship. Wow.
Very cool.
And it's like, okay, you did it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. That's really cool. So yeah, any more memories? I've thrown a few.
No, I mean, there's a whole lot. I mean, I do think the relationships, we had a lot of fun. I mean, I remember, we would have our game times, but when I established some kind of a lesson, I didn't water it down. Boy, when we came in, we got into the scriptures, and this is what it says. As hard as it was, this is the truth of the Bible.
Yeah.
Now, it's up to you whether you live it or not, but it's not my choice to condemn. I know in the world we live in today, and, some scripture, I know some people go drink, some people don't. We've got all kinds of things going on within the church. But I remember asking a question because, I had a liver transplant, so I can't drink anyway, but wine is a thing. You can have dinner and have a wine. But I remember looking at some of our kids because we had so many kids that didn't have families come to our church. And I said, I just want to know, I want to be a strong pastor. I don't want to ever do anything as a minister or as a Christian that will turn somebody away from Christ. Yeah. And I asked, if you saw me out at dinner one night, or I said, well, let's go. If you see me in a bar and I'm drinking, would it affect my ministry on you as your pastor? Yeah. And some of our kids definitely said it would, Miss Allen, or it would, Missy, Pastor Missy, because I'm from an abusive home. My dad is an alcoholic. And he beats on us. And so that's the only thing that comes to my mind.
Wow. Yeah.
I said, okay, what about just drinking wine? Same concept. And we had so many kids where alcohol affected their family that even if it's just me drinking one wine, they don't see it. They see the hurt that they're seeing. So as a minister, I decided then I'm going to sustain. Yeah. That is not for me because, again, I don't want to ever, whether it's right or wrong, I don't want to ever do anything that would hurt somebody. Listening to the wrong kind of music. Yeah. I have to make sure, and as a minister, and I'm going to give you a little word of, as a minister, you live in a glass house kind of perspective. Your life, people are watching, and you just want to make sure that you're living up to how God is leading you, that you won't lead somebody astray. Yeah. And I always, every morning I get up and say, please, God, keep me honest, keep me spiritual. And if I'm doing anything wrong, if there's any wicked ways in me, please show me. Because I don't want to have the intent to turn somebody away from you because of the way I live my life.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, did you ever expect me to go into ministry? And what are your biggest? I guess what are you least surprised about, and what are you most surprised about as you reflect on this?
Okay, I wouldn't say I wouldn't have expected you. I didn't think that was part of your path, and the only reason I didn't necessarily think that was part of your path is because I just saw you struggling so much spiritually. Mm-hmm. But I truly knew that those that struggle spiritually and they're looking into the word to find the answers, those are the people that God will usually use. So I knew that. So I didn't have a doubt that you could be a leader.
Right.
What I doubted was if Andy could come out of himself and allow God to use you. And that's really what I struggled with, because I looked at it back at a lot and go, oh, I just hope you, and I didn't get to see all that. Does that make sense? I saw a lot of the struggling years. Sure. And I saw some of the growing, but knowing that you'd be, I'd see you work more with teens or youth, but being a pastor, adults, that I didn't see that coming. And I but not saying that you can't, not saying that you can't, but it's like, gosh, you got a lot to learn. But again, God is so much better than we, and he's turned you around, which is good.
Yeah, it's funny because I'll tell people this. I didn't want to be a pastor. It wasn't my plan at all. It was something that I felt, and I do feel like it ended up being a calling. But and I still think it's interesting you say, like, I could see you being a leader. Sometimes I think the leadership side of me is stronger than the like shepherding side. But there still is that part of leading a church. And so I think I need people around me that are really good shepherds. And so that's been something I've discovered. But because I equated pastoring with kind of like having an office and always being there for people, that didn't seem interesting to me at all. But there were types of church that I thought needed to exist. And that probably came out of that thinking and angst and all that. And I ended up being challenged at some point that if you think that church needs to exist, you can go around looking for it forever, or you could start it. And that's...
Want to make a change, you got to be involved in the change. Don't just stand back and...
critiquing. Yeah. And that's what kind of pushed me over the edge. And I went, okay, I guess that's what maybe I need to do. And so because of that angst and that how hard things were, it's interesting to hear you describe that, but it's true. I was really hard on other pastors. Like as throughout my years, I had a lot of criticism for how things were done. And I think I knew that to become a pastor was to subject myself to that criticism from others and even from myself. And that was something I was not too interested in. But yeah, at some point, actually, I remember seeing a billboard. It was a funny thing. I was driving down Speedway Boulevard in Tucson, and I saw a billboard with a pastor and his wife on it. And my thought was, those people are morons. They put their face up on a billboard. Like, do you know how much, like, how exposed you are, like saying you're great pastors to everyone in town? And I feel like I sensed God, and I'd been paying attention to listening to some pastors I thought were really good, and I'd seen them be criticized. And I felt God saying, there is no path to follow me without criticism.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh.
That'll preach.
Yeah.
We always like, that'll preach.
Yeah. And so somewhere in there, I was like, okay, so I don't get to avoid that.
No. And here's the thing, Andy, you asked me, how does church need to be different than what it was? You made a point just now that saying, I was so used, and this was the thing that hurt me in ministry, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. Okay. I'm driving kids home till 10:30, 11 o'clock on a Wednesday night.
Yeah.
Saturday, we're going to do activities together. Sunday night, I'm doing activity. When is my day off?
Yeah.
Under a leadership where you need to be in the office from this time to this time, but I spent a whole weekend retreat with these teenagers, but you still need to be in office on Monday. I had a hard time with that also.
Yeah.
Church, and I've been reading a lot lately about, Christ didn't go in a building a lot of times. He's out in the world. Yeah. Church is not an 8 to 5. Yeah. It is not a Monday through Friday and a weekend. Church is where the people are that need to hear about him. So whether it's at a football game, there should not be set hours. And so that's, I believe, as a ministry, and it's hard because you've got people that are working that world side, but in the world we're at today, We need to get outside those church doors. You got to have an office day to say this is it. But the other time, I'm out doing ministry.
Yeah.
And that's what church needs to look like today.
Yeah. And that is very, you've kind of described our church. You won't find us in the office much. I in fact, didn't even have one. The reason I ended up having one is I had a bunch of stuff I needed to store. And also every once in a while you have that counseling appointment or...
I was like marriage counseling, because I just did a wedding. Counseling and meeting. You got to have a place to meet.
Yeah, that's, you can control the environment. It's going to be, it's going to be quiet, private, whatever.
Right.
But for the longest time, I didn't even have one. Missy, we probably got about 10 minutes here if you still do, but do you have is there anything you want to know about what's...
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
As being a pastor or a minister or however, what is your number one? I always had, like, to me, mine was building relationships with everybody. If I can build a relationship, then I can share the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
What is your number one thing that you strive for in your ministry, if you had to pick one?
Yeah, that's really good. So I'll tell you, this is a little bit of the stated strategy of our church, but this very much comes from my thinking, and I think it kind of gets at the question. I can get more specific, but we talk about this all the time. We have a graphic for it. We say we are an outpost of the church, and what we mean by that is that we are committed to the church, to the historic, worldwide, cross-denominational, the whole body of Christ. We're a part of it. We're not reinventing Christianity. We're committed to it, but we're committed to placing ourselves on the edge of it, in order to be there to engage with people who don't see it, understand it, maybe who have spiritual questions, but they don't really have access, to people who are maybe like opening themselves to God, but don't know where to go. And to where we're in such close proximity to unbelievers that our lives are very accessible to them. And then also for people who have, whether it's hurts in the church or they were like maybe younger version of me, where they just questioned everything and struggled. We want to be present for them as they kind of toy around with leaving the church. Mm-hmm. As they start to think about that, we want to be positioned well to say, well, come here and let's talk about, you can still show up here, even if you're not sure about it all. So we talk about that very specifically. And so we say this, so this means we're going to be invested, we're going to be connected to the broader church, but we're also going to be like adamant about being in the lives of unbelievers, in the lives of people who are struggling. It's going to mean our church is messy. It's going to mean that we're going to have people come and go. It's going to be unstable to some degree, but we feel like this is needed. So I would say I function that way. So I spend...
Do you have a lot of pushback? I'll interrupt, but do you have a lot of pushback from some of your parishioners or people that go because you try to... I always say, we're trying to reach the unchurched, y'all. They're not going to be like you. And, you always... Sometimes I think that's what hurts the church. Do you have pushback or?
No. Because, though, it was a church that I planted...
With that idea.
In
Scripture.
And I think I'm very aware that if I, say I went back to First Church today and said, I'm here to be your pastor, that'd be a very different experience potentially with like an established group. So we have our struggles, but that's not one of them. I think that the people who are in our church get that, want that, do that. If anything, we have a hard time getting our people to do the basic Christian things. Like we've got people that are like all in for being out in the world. And I think really carrying the gospel there, But then when you go, but really though, you should attend church too. And you should.
Do you do online and?
So we
house
actually didn't. We used to not. We had podcasts only during COVID. We offered online. We stopped it because we wanted to see people re-engage, and then we brought it back. And I've been really back and forth on this. The reason that we brought it back was I actually listened to a really good podcast by some guys I trust, and they were kind of debating this. And one of the people said, so I get the downside that somebody might just stay home and watch, but in most churches that are relational, that's never going to scratch the itch. And that's our church. We always have dinner together. The highlight of our church is being there. I don't think you'd like it
being at home by yourself.
It would be weird. And so it's there for two reasons. For when one of our, we actually had somebody was sick the other day, they tuned in. We had 2 people stream it last Sunday. It's not like.
See, that's what we do.
Yeah. It's available.
For the shut-ins that can't get to church, or people that have to work and they need to see it later, but we encourage to be there.
And I would not say we host church online in that you don't get the full, we don't have this like, wow, what a great production it is online. It's just, you can stream in. And then the other reason that I thought was even more compelling, and I knew it was true for me, they said, when you move to a new city, or if you're somebody who's considering church, most people of today's generation will start online. It's like the handshake space. Mm-hmm. And I thought that's true. Like if I moved somewhere, I would start on websites, and then if I could stream a service, I might start there to get a flavor of it before I walked in. So that's
we did that with our pastor search. We were looking at pastor. We'd go watch their live stream just because I was like, I don't want to see you. I need to know what you've done 5 years or a year, how long you've been live streaming. I want to see from beginning, middle to the end, because I need to see who you are as a person.
Right.
So that's different from where I was at as a full-time pastor to where we're at now. That's a whole different. You made a comment. I know we're short on time, that you try to get people to follow the word, or, you know what I mean? It's like, I get people to hear, but I need them to not want to be so much part of the world. I need them to kind of grow, stop drinking as a baby, kind of grow. Remember, you can't that's God's job.
Yeah.
You make sure what you are teaching them is what God wants you to teach them. And you pray for God's conviction, because once they get it, Andy, once you got it, then God can do a whole lot with it. But until that person realizes, but you've got to keep giving them the word. That's why I didn't stop. You got to keep giving them those ideas, the scripture, activities, because somewhere, whether it comes from me, I might lay the foundation, but somebody else may say it, they get it. Yeah. Then think about where they're going to be.
That is a great way to land it. I'm actually going to stop the recording right there because that was so good. So, thank you. And that's such a good reminder for me, by the way, because it's great to hear even that the reminder that my own story is like that you were faithfully offering and teaching the word and praying, and then you saw God work through you, but also through others. And so thank you.
And I'm not going to tell you that because, hey, let God do it. I'm going to love you. I'm going to encourage you, Andy. I'm going to love you. And always remember, even though we're miles and miles apart, I'm still your youth pastor. Even though
I know.
I could say I'm still your pastor. So I keep up with a lot of people. We've lost some over the years, and my heart hurts.
Yeah.
Some that we've lost. And my prayer always, Lord, help. I hope that they found you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really, really appreciate it.
Hope it helped. Take care.
You've been listening to Faith Over Breakfast with Pastor Eric Siepen and Pastor Andy Littleton. Please share us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thank you.